Hello and welcome. Another Wednesday, another 1 o'clock Eastern Time. How is everybody doing? How is everybody doing in this situation? I think this is number 18 of my Wednesday tips from working from home. I hope some of them were helpful. I hope that you can take away something. We always say when we present, if people take away one thing, that's a lot. So just take away one thing that works for you. And in today's podcast that I will be uploading shortly, I was talking to Pooja Iyer in India, and she is actually a career counselor in Bangalore, India, and she helps young adults to find their career. And she says sometimes young adults want to become a doctor, and then they go and shadow and see, oh, it's stressful, I don't like to see blood, I don't like the way it smells, so they don't become a doctor. But thanks to her vision that you can go and shadow something, or you take an online class these days, you realize that maybe a job, a career that you anticipate is not really what you want. So we really need Pooja in order to create our career path. However, we know that we can also change our careers. We might start out somewhere and we go in a different direction. So one career can lead us into another career. Who knew when I started to work in an office that I then would go into human resources or work for the government, work as a travel agent, and then become an executive coach. It's what you are doing and what you are passionate about. I think that's most important. And in these days, we know there's a lot of unemployed people or furloughed people. We have to rethink probably our career and think like, what else is there out there that I could do? Or we can start with our hobby and maybe do something with our hobby. So take that time and consider what else you could do. So certainly listen to Pooja and my podcast that is available now. You can get it on my website. It's on the podcast and it's the latest episode with her. And when I look back, I was wondering what do I share today? But when I look back at my career, I remember I went with my mom to, these were the days that we were invited, the both of us, to go to a career counselor. So initially I took some tests. There were like pages and pages of career profession definitions, and they said like just pick a few. So I remember I picked a few, and one of them was and now I have to look it up, it's milliner, and it sounded in German, it's called Modistin. To me it sounded something like mode, fashion, something fashionable. It sounded very cool to me. It was just that sound probably that I had in my head, and I was like, I would be curious to find out what that is. So then we go for the assessment, the discussion with the lady, and I remember, I mean, I was 13 or 14 years old. I remember it was an old, ugly lady. Sometimes, you know, that's all you remember. She was old. What can an old lady tell a 13, 14-year-old when it comes to career planning? So this is kind of like my judgment that I had at this time, but this is a vivid image that I have still in my mind. So we go over everything good, and then she says, why did you pick that profession? And remember, many times I said, don't use the word or the question why. I felt like she put her knife into my heart, and I was like, I don't know, it sounded so nice. So me studying psychology now, many years later, I thought this lady, if she was creative, innovative, and all of the above, she could have said, well, let's look at that job. Maybe that would be something for you. Do you really know what it is? Well, no, she didn't say that. She says, why did you pick this? Well, if you look up what a milliner does, it's actually a person who makes hats that are fashionable. And this is actually a very interesting job. I looked it up later on, not when I was 13 or 14, but just recently when I was just revisiting that episode. So then, as a career counselor, a career coach, I think we all need to be very creative and innovative and not just let it go and say, why did you pick this? Because maybe it would not be an interest of hers, but make sure that you ask, what is the motivation? And now I'm asking different questions. What is the motivation? What does the sound mean to you, or even the word mean to you when it comes to a profession? I don't know. This would be my recommendation for this lady. Probably she's not with us anymore, but yeah, as a career counselor, I think you can mess up many things. And you know what else she said? Your mom was working in an office. It's good for you to work in an office. I don't think that would fly now anymore. Or a 13, 14-year-old kid would say, yeah, because my mom was in an office, I also go to an apprenticeship and I work in an office. But little did I know, this was the beginning of me maybe becoming an entrepreneur. I always say, start with business. You can learn everything and anything under the sun later on. But if you have a concept of the business, that's what we especially need today. So little did I know, I took an apprenticeship, and I have some more stories, horrible stories in a way when you think about it. So my father was an engineer. You would assume he's very good with math and everything. I wasn't very good with math. So I had to go to many interviews, and one person said to me, how come, and maybe he even asked why, how come your father is an engineer and you're not good in math? How detrimental was that to my psyche, to my being uplifted? So obviously I did not get that job there like an intern, but how can you crush somebody and say, your father is an engineer and you're not good in math? That doesn't mean anything. So these were the days. I think today you are not allowed to ask that anymore. I for sure know that. We don't ask what is the profession of your father. We don't ask the profession of your mother. It's about you. It's what you bring to the table. So, oh my God, what did I have to go through? But still, we can change the past. I want to learn from the past, and I still came out fairly good. And now I want to say hi, hallo Heinz. Jetzt sage ich noch ein paar Worte in Schweizerdeutsch, weil der Heinz hat gesagt, er möchte gerne auch Schweizerdeutsch hören. Ich hoffe, es geht alles gut, und let's switch into English. I know there was a comment, why can't this be in Swiss German or German? So just a little hello to Switzerland. I know it's all beautiful. I spoke to a friend of mine yesterday who wants to tour my neighborhood. Certainly, if any of you ever have the opportunity to go there, check in with me. I can give you some tips where to go and where not to go. But obviously, these days, everybody has to go into quarantine. So make sure, if you want to travel these days, check out if you have to do 10 or 14 days quarantine, and avoid, I read in Switzerland, you have to pay 10,000 Swiss francs of fine. So we don't want to have that. So nevertheless, this is my story. I was all crushed because I was not good in math. I didn't like math. And what I want to say, it was because of the teacher. He wasn't a very good teacher, but that's okay. I made it to here, and that's my story. It gives a good story, I think. But if you think of it, a career counselor really has a big and a huge impact. And as we say, sometimes you should get a second opinion. Maybe that would have been a good advice. Don't go just to one career counselor or coach. Ask many people. And for the young listeners, talk to as many people as possible, ask a lot of questions, be curious, and try out as many things as you can. There's so many options. I'm a mentor for EdSnaps, and they're focusing on STEM, science, technology, engineering, also art. They are at the A, art and math. And young women are studying math, engineering, gaming, or what have you. So different things that I would have different things that I've never heard of, but certainly interesting things, and they are being matched up with people from the industry where you can learn and ask questions. We know adults ask only 2 questions per day. And I also would like to add, how are you doesn't mean that's not a question. Usually in the US, when you say, hi, how are you? That's just basically saying hello. That doesn't mean you're interested in how the person is doing. And children, they ask 100 questions. Sometimes they are driving us crazy, but at least they're curious. Not like us, we only ask 2 questions. So make sure that you ask more questions. Even if you are now in the lockdown, you are working from home, is there any career change on the horizon for you? Why not? They say people can have, or as an average, up to 4 different careers. Why not? It's never too late. If you look at, for example, writers, some of them, their best books or poems or whatever art they have produced came after the age of 50 or even 60. Or people who are starting their own companies, it can be later in their lives. So even if you're in midlife, mid-career, don't give up. Don't think you have to do the same over and over. I had a client once, and probably she was in her late 20, early 30s. And I said to her, how many more years do you have to work? And she's like, oh my God, I'm getting depressed. And I said to her, do you think you want to do the same for the next 30 years? And she's like, oh, no. So think about how many more years do you have to work, or do you want to work? And then that might be able to give you an idea of what do you want to do? What do you want to do when you grow up? Actually, that's the worst question. What do you want to do when you grow up? Please never grow up. Be curious, change your career. You can do many great things. You can also have a side hustle. You can do anything you want. I'm just picking up a book, The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, and he says, break through the blocks and win your inner creative battles. He says, dreaming about writing the great American novel, and it can be any novel, doesn't mean it has to be American. Regret not finishing your paintings, poems, or screenplays. Want to start a business or charity? Wish you could start dieting or exercising today. And the last one I like, hope to run a marathon someday. So if you have something like this on your bucket list, The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. I just started the book, but it's basically get through your fears, do something, dream big, and do something for yourself. Not a bad idea. So what is your career that you would do? And Sheryl Sandberg says it, what would you do if you were not afraid? We have to think maybe in terms of what would you do if time and money was not a stumbling block for you? So what would you do? I think I still would do the same, coaching and writing and presenting. It's just a little harder with the lockdown where you can't travel anywhere to share your experiences. But we also have to be creative when we look at Janet Grooms, the 2020 Uplift Project. She put together a book, and on June 16, so almost a month ago, we had actually a virtual book launch. And for me, it was actually better because she's in the UK, I'm in the US, so I would not have been able to participate in the book launch But since she made it virtual, it was possible for me. So we can also be very happy with what we can do with technology. So with technology, we can have virtual book launches. That's what I actually am planning to. So I said, this is a secret, but I'm writing my next book and I'm already planning for a virtual book launch. Who knows when we can meet in person again. And if it's virtual, everybody who has an internet connection these days can actually be part of it. Not everybody's on Facebook or Instagram, but we find other options like YouTube, and that's also possible. So what else is happening in the world? Any questions for me that I can answer? I know a lot of people are listening and watching. What is she telling today? What's happening today? Okay, so what's happening for me? This week I have many podcast interviews that I'm conducting. I have been speaking to a person in Singapore who is originally from Karachi. Then I spoke to a person in Calgary. Again, thanks technology, it was possible. And at the end of the week, I will be talking to a person in New Zealand. I have another person from the US that I will be talking to this week. And then what do I have to do? I will have to do editing, adding the music and make it look and sound beautiful and then send it out. So far, I have produced already 64 different podcasts and with people from all different walks of lives, and that was my mission and vision for the Take It From the Iron Woman, because we don't want to talk only sports. If you only talk sports, it gets boring. But there's other people who have interesting stories, like Pooja, for example. She said it took her 16 years to basically start her own company. Why not? Ask the question, what was your motivation? How did you start the thinking? How did you get started? And so forth and so forth. So I have a lot of questions and a lot of people are open. And if you wanted to become a guest on my podcast, just send me a message and we'll set it up. And one more thing, I will interview a person in Australia and then I have covered all the continents. How cool is that? So we had a person in the Spitsbergen in the Arctic. I don't have anybody in Antarctica, but then we have everything covered: North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia. I have New Zealand, but that doesn't count as Australia. So I will have somebody in Australia talking to us how it is down under. And my 500s blog was just posted 2 weeks ago. I'm very proud of that. 500 blogs is 10 years. And when you think about numbers, so it takes 66 days to change a behavior. And when I listen to people now in the lockdown or moderate lockdown, it has been more than 66 days. So it became kind of like the new normal. We have to adapt if we like it or not, but we have to adapt to the new situation. So 66 days have gone. What have you adapted? What have you learned? What is actually good for you? And maybe what is not so good for you? I certainly hear from people who are introverted. They love it. They don't have to go outside. They can stay inside. They can work on their own pace, and they're not bothered by all those extroverted people who are like, do you have a minute? Do you have a minute? I want to talk to you. And they're like, no, I don't want to talk to anybody, because they like to think and produce on their own. So actually for introverted people, this is like a nice time. They can hide in their cave. They can do what they want. And this is their times. And for the poor extroverted people, this is difficult. So I was listening to a person and she says, I'm super extroverted. I don't know what to do with my time. So how she was overcompensating is like she filled her calendar with like, talk to somebody, talk to somebody, talk to somebody. And that would be her talk to people in the hallway, at the water cooler, but at least she was able to fill her calendar. She said she did social networkings with people, she did happy hour with people, and then she realized not everybody liked it. So also, if you need to communicate more with others, maybe ask them, is that okay for you? Because I need to communicate. And if the people say, well, let's do it next week, then that might be a message for you not to bother them too much. Or ask them, what are your habits now? How many happy hours have you had? Or do you have enough of those happy hours? So I think we need to be a little more mindful with like intruding in people's spaces. If they are more introverted, they might not like all the social interactions. If they're more extroverted, they need that. So I think everybody needs to give a little bit. The extroverts need to shut up a little bit, and the introverts, they need to open up a little more. So I think that's all I want to say. So what would you do if you were not afraid? Maybe think about the career change. Maybe I should look in this position as a millionaire. Maybe I should start something creative. Who knows? I can also look into do something on the side. So we have Monday and Wednesday podcasts with interesting people from around the world, soon from every continent. And on Wednesday, we keep the work from home Facebook Live at 1 p.m. Eastern. And on Friday is the weekly blog that's coming out. Love to hear from all of you. Send me some feedback, send me questions if you don't want to put them into the live. But certainly I can address other things that are of interest to you. I like to talk about my books or what I'm just doing. I hope this is helpful for you. And if you go to a career coach, if you don't like the career coach, please take another one. There's many out there, and there is certainly a good one out there for you. So don't think if there is a shingle outside of the door or even online, I'm the best career coach. It might not be working for you. A coach needs to be somebody that you trust, somebody that you like, and the chemistry has to be 100%. So if you have somebody that you don't like the way they look, they sound, they talk, or what advice they give you, even though they really shouldn't give you advice, then please change. Talk to me if you think I'm able to help you. I'm certainly happy to do that. I can only tell you my story, how it didn't went so well. So we'll see. Okay, so I wish everybody a good Wednesday, a good rest of the week, and I also hope that you're planning some fun, some relaxation time. After all, it's the summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Thank you so much for being there, and see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you.